What does Paul do in Romans chapter 10, verse 8? He takes a scalpel and he cuts out the last words that you may do it, which is the whole point, and deletes it. Gone. Disappeared. How do you play with the Bible? How do you literally excise the whole point of the text? What are you doing? And if you're going to play with my Bible, you think I'm going to be a Christian?
Now, let me ask you this now. Some of the stuff that Christians are looking at the Old Testament and just getting it wrong. For example, like the virgin thing, or what other examples are there besides that?
Matthew provides 11 fulfillment citations that are completely, it's not that it's a misunderstanding, it's scandalous. It means the passages are invented, taken out of context, or chopped up completely. Paul, there are really two writers in the New Testament that quote extensively from the Hebrew Bible. One of them is Matthew, and the other is Paul. In Romans chapter 10, as an example, Paul is, we presume, quoting from Deuteronomy chapter 30. Let me just give a background. Deuteronomy 30 is there to convey, it's the very end of the Torah, to convey that you really can keep the Torah. You can do it. It's not too difficult. It's not far off. It's not in heaven. Who'll bring it to us that we may do it? The word is near to you so that you may do it. And I urge you to look at Deuteronomy 30, verse 14. Okay? Just really simple, so that you may do it. But then we go to Romans chapter 2. Romans is the last letter of Paul chronologically, but more germane to this conversation, it's the most important letter of Paul. It's like the constitution of Christianity. And in verse 8, he quotes this verse. He supposedly quotes Deuteronomy 30, verse 14, where it says, the word is near to you, in your mouth and in your heart. Now, in Deuteronomy 30, verse 14, I beg you to look it up, the passage ends, so that you may do it. So that you may do it. That's the point. The point is, you can do it. Anybody who tells you can't keep the Torah, don't listen, you can do it. Okay? What does Paul do in Romans chapter 10, verse 8? He takes a scalpel and he cuts out the last words that you may do it, which is the whole point, and deletes it. Gone. Disappeared. How do you play with the Bible? How do you literally excise the whole point of the text? What are you doing? And if you're going to play with my Bible, you think I'm going to be a Christian? You think I'm going to convert to Christianity? This idea that you can't do it, this antinomian approach is found all over the place. Misquoting Habakkuk, very famous, chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, where Habakkuk, I think in the Habakkuk says, is a prophet who says, look, be patient. Those who have trust in God, the ultimate redemption will take place, and the person who is really faithful will someone who is righteous will really have faith in God, will have faith. Okay? Paul completely misapplies that in Romans, completely misapplies that in Ephesians, so that faith is what makes someone righteous. It completely ripped Habakkuk completely out of context. So that's routine in Paul. Now here's the point that I want you viewers to get. Strikingly, Paul was the great success in Christianity, and Matthew was the great failure. What do I mean? Paul was written with who in mind? Paul was writing primarily to a non-Jewish audience, right? People who couldn't tell the difference between chaff and wheat, between genuine biblical hermeneutics that Rabbi Gamliel would have engaged in, and the game of hide the ball. So his audience bought it. That's why Paul was so successful, because Paul was writing to non-Jews who were clueless about the Hebrew Bible. I mean, imagine the ancient world where you couldn't even get a Bible because it had to be handwritten. Matthew, on the other hand, who was Matthew's intended audience? Almost certainly Jewish people, right? Matthew, we don't know who wrote Matthew. We don't know where it was written. But we can be fairly sure that Matthew had a Jewish audience in mind, and he wanted to convince them to become what we now call Christians. Matthew, therefore, engages in fulfillment citations, quoting passages in the Bible that none of the other Gospels do it, certainly not in the way Matthew does. What happens? The Jews reading Matthew, encountering Matthew, go, oh, we definitely know that Christianity is a false religion. So Matthew fails because he quotes the Bible. Paul succeeds because he quotes the Bible, not because of the integrity, but because of who the audience is. Paul succeeds because his audience were ignoramuses. They had just no knowledge of the Hebrew Bible. Matthew's intended audience, Jews, were people who could understand the Hebrew Bible and knew immediately to reject the tenets of the church.
Adon olam asher malach בטרם כל יציר נברא ועת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך